So what we're going to look at next is some of the joint anatomy for the neck. And as we look at this neck, what's so interesting is that the neck has a very interesting job because of all of the muscles and the large muscles that attach to it, but almost more importantly is that the size of the head and the relationship of how the head and the neck have to work together is that all of these muscles got to try to balance all of those joints on top of each other. And one of the things that can happen is that the head is essentially the cherry on top of the cake. And if that head is pitched forward or maybe tilted one way or the other, all of these muscles coming up contract overly hard, trying to find balance so the head can sit level, and the neck is at the mercy of all of that. So all of the joints within the neck, all of the facets of where the vertebrae are articulating with each other can be impinged and had more pressure on them than what they're supposed to, and can cause all sorts of issues within that joint. And where that cervical spine and the base of the skull come together can be a very large problem for a lot of people when that connective tissue imbalance is coming into play. So the neck is a very delicate area, and the job of the neck is to allow that spinal column and the spinal cord to come out of the skull and the head down throughout the rest of the spine. And this is why so many people can end up in a situation where their neck literally just locks up and freezes because it's trying to protect the body from any further damage. If your brain perceives that any of these neck vertebrae are too much out of position or there's too much danger happening anywhere within this neck, it's so scared that something is going to happen to the spinal column or the spinal or the stem of the spinal cord that it locks everything up. So it's really important that we keep in mind and we have a tool to be able to get the nervous system to calm down so that joint anatomy of the neck can be more functional, healthy, and happy. So again, what's really interesting is that the size of the head and how big the head is, and it has to sit on this tiny little point way up here, and so it's a big massive structure that has to pivot and turn around on top of that very top vertebrae, which are very thin bones, and that can cause a lot of issues over time with a wear and tear dynamic. So if we look at some of the connective tissue anatomy within the head and the neck, we can see all of these cables running up and attaching to all of these different spots. There's certain spots within your neck on one bone where there's 13 different muscles attaching to one single vertebrae. And when any of those cables are out of balance, it's very similar to if we had a tent pole going up in the middle of a big circus tent, and there's all of these cables going all of these different directions to try to keep the tent upright. The neck is kind of going through that similar experience where the vertebrae are sitting in the very middle, and all of these muscles and all of these cables are coming down at all of these different directions, and if there's an imbalance with how those muscles or those connective tissues are engaging, it can really have a negative impact on what's going on within your body. And the big bulky muscles throughout the shoulder girdle and that bottom side of the neck on the front and the back side really have a huge impact. The big trapezius on the back side, your big neck muscle on the front side called your sternocleidomastoid, and how all of those attach to the shoulder, and then these big pec muscles in the front, the shoulder musculature on the side of the body has a huge impact on the positioning of your neck. And as we look through here, in addition to all of the neck musculature that's below the head, there is a tremendous amount of musculature in and around the jaw and the skull, the muscles that we use to smile and frown, hopefully smiling a lot more than frowning, the muscles for chewing that come up in and above your ears are all very powerful musculature, and it can really shift and change the position of your jaw and your head and how those units relate to your neck.